Atisa Dipankara Srijana. Our moderator for this session is Venerable Dr. Pooja Dabral. Dr. Dabral has already been introduced, so we will save time and move ahead. The panelists for this session are Venerable Khensur Jangchup Choeden Rinpoche of the International Buddhist Confederation, Venerable Tenzin Choyang, Jangchub Choeling, Nunnery, and Dr. Penpa Dorjee from the Dalai Lama Center for Tibetan and Indian Ancient Wisdom. I invite the distinguished panelists to please take their seats on the dais. Over to our moderator, Venerable Dr. Pooja Dabral.
Thank you very much, Priyambadaji. So without any break, I think we are seamlessly moving into the next session. And I think because there were no questions, this session will stir some questions in our mind. So now the session is very important after we have discussed life and particularly the places that he has influenced. We go into the deeds of Acharya Atisa, and the panel is very rich as we see the panelists are great practitioner as well as scholars and expert in this area. So start with, we have the panel discussion to be with 3 speakers are there, and each speaker will be given 20 minutes time, followed by a question answer. And the first speaker, I have a huge regard for Venerable Khensur Choeden Rinpoche. I had the privilege of studying Acharya Chandrakirti's first 5 chapter, Madhyamika Avatar. He's a great master from 7th century AD Nalanda on wisdom of emptiness, and the first 5 chapters on the first 5 paramitas, paramita of Dan, Sheel, patience, and then meditation, as well as the enthusiasm. So as a teacher, I take a very huge regard and also very privileged to introduce him to the audience here. So Venerable Khensur Choeden Rinpoche was born in Himachal Pradesh, India, and joined the Ganden Shatse Norling Monastery in his teens, where he completed his monastic education and earned his Geshe Larampa degree in 1997. Followed by the Geshe Nangrampa, a disciple of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Rinpoche has traveled widely, teaching the Dharma across Asia, Europe, and America. He served as abbot of Ganden Shatse Monastery and is currently the General Secretary of the International Buddhist Confederation, continuing his leadership in global Buddhist dialogue and education. So as I mentioned, he has a great scholarship and also a great practitioner who is taking a huge responsibility to take the teachings of the Buddha in a most authentic way in India and abroad. The topic that he will be speaking on is Acharya Atisa's journey, a cultural and spiritual renaissance across Asia. So please welcome him with a resounding round of applause.
Anirodham anutpadam anuchedam ashashvatam anekartham nanartham nagamam nirgamam ya pratitya samutpadam parpancho pashimam shivam deshyamasa sambudastam vande vadatam varam. With paying homage to great historic Buddha for teaching Pratitya Samutpad, I also pay homage to great Master Atisa. Now the topic that I was given is the deeds of Atisa. I'm not an eloquent speaker like we have listened just now, but I would like to kind of share a few of my thoughts. When we talk about the deeds of Atisa, in Tibetan tradition, we normally have this saying, Kebe Chawat Nambasum, Cheda Tuda Tambo. So, an expert's deeds are three types. There is teaching, debating, and writing. That is what it means. So, in every of these fields, the great master Atisa has excelled and became an outstanding person in himself. When we go through his biography, we see that at a quite young age, he was challenged to debate. And that was a very common tradition at that time. Shastrarth is a very common thing in Indian intellectual community. And Atisa was challenged for Shastrarth, and then he 3 times has kind of defeated those challengers in ancient India. So that shows how well he performed in the field of debating. And then when we talk about the teaching, throughout his life, Atisa has been teaching. Atisa taught in India, Atisa taught in Indonesia, Atisa taught in Tibet. The entire life he has dedicated for teaching. So that is the second one. And the third one, when it comes to writing, authoring kind of books and texts, in the Tibetan literature, we have this name that is saying Chushung Jasa. Hundreds of kind of writings of Atishas are collected in the under this name, beside the great writings of him like Bodhisattva Mani Avali and Bodhi Pradeep, these kind of things. Those are kind of extra upon the 100 plus those texts are counted. So these are the 3 areas where he has functioned so well. But when it comes to the deeds and legacy, I think we don't speak quite often about one of the kind of unique legacy of Atisa is about his teachings of Tantra. We most of the time we say he avoided teaching Tantra in Tibet. Suppose he taught in many occasions to kind of highly qualified students, groups of students. Particularly, there is this practice of 16 drops of Kadamba tradition, which is a very kind of unique practice. That is a high kind of, that practice has a part of it as a highest Yoga Tantra practice. So this is needed to be understood. This is, to some extent, it has also remained a little bit of controversial, but to this date, we have found that from our experiential kind of feeling that this is a wonderful teaching, where there are kind of 16 drops of the initiations, and then after the 16 drops of initiations, then the practitioner have to train themselves in these kind of practices. His Holiness Dalai Lama has given this initiation many occasions, and then this is well known in Tibetan tradition, and this is not just well known in Tibetan tradition, this is well known in the global level. Many of the Western students also have received this teaching. So, when we talk about the deeds and legacy, I think it is really important that we should also include the 16 drops of Kadam tradition. These are the things that I would like to tell you about. And Atisa, when we talk about the Atisa, I think I try to avoid kind of doing a lot of repetition here. A lot of things are already spoken about Atisa. So about life of Atisa, we have learned a lot of things. But there are certain things, those are very interesting, like how Atisa became a Buddhist monk, he was not permitted to become a Buddhist monk by his parents. It was necessary to have a parental kind of agreement or parental permission prior to become a Buddhist monk. So he has that challenge taken. He had to kind of face this challenge in his life. So until he became the Buddhist monk, he had to do a lot of things to convince his parents to give him up, because his parents were thinking about inheriting their kind of kingdom to him rather than to his two of his brothers and two of his brothers. But he never had that kind of wish, willingness to go into and inherit the kind of kingdom and then work out the kind of worldly hassles and worldly kind of network. So he was in a big kind of trouble at that time. So through that time, he was supported very well by his mentors, who were kind of great yogis, and they helped him to find out a way to how to harmoniously get this permission of his parents. It is a very, very kind of interesting and kind of to some extent a kind of entertaining story about that. So he has to kind of recruit yogis, a group of yogis with him, and then he have to kind of have to perform the conduct of being a yogi and kind of acting like a mad yogi. So which kind of gave an impression to his parents that this son has been lost. So we cannot afford to make a mad yogi to become a kind of king. So that's why we should better give him up to the monastic life. So that is how it goes on. So this is something that just I wanted to share. Beside that, the kind of these are the more kind of important things I thought I should be sharing. About the deeds, the three major areas of functioning of a kind of established scholar, and then the kind of legacy about the 16 drops of Kadam tradition, and then finally the kind of the entertaining story of how he has to go through the ups and downs of his time. Beside that, I think if we go through the discussion, we go through the question and answering, I think we will interact more rather than going to the storytelling. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe-la, for a very quick but very comprehensive presentation, and also highlighting the parts which are very important from his life and a great motivation and inspiration for both scholars as well as practitioners. Because although his whole legacy of what we call it Lamrim practice today in Tibet and Mongolia and also Bhutan as well as Himalayan part of India, it is very much alive. Even in India, in Himalayan part of India, we should really explore that. Although it seems to be his contribution into the meditation and the retreat practices, but great contribution is done when it comes to logic and debate. He debated many wrong views and clarified through his Shastrarth and Vad Nyaya tradition that he has brought into light. So, and also, thank you very much for clarifying. There are many misconceptions when it comes to his biographical detail that he avoided talking about Tantra, which is never the case. In fact, the same book, if we just go through this 67 verses, verse number 58 and 59, he very clearly mentions, I would like to read it just that we have a reference. Having thus meditated on suchness, which is emptiness, eventually after reaching heat and so forth, some path on the path to enlightenment, the thoroughly joyous, one of the bhumi of bodhisattva, and the others are attained. And before long, the enlightened state of Buddhahood, if you wish to create with ease the collection of enlightenment, So if you want to collect the merit that is required for Tantra practice, through activities of pacification, increase and so forth, gained by the power of mantra. Mantra, Tantra, Vajrayana mean the same. So here we can see, and then it is the verse number 58 and 59. So from there onwards up till 67, it's all about what he talked about, the Tantra practice. So thank you very much for clarifying many points for both the scholars as well as practitioner. I will, without taking much time, would like to request our next speaker, Venerable Tenzin Chunala, and it's very delighted to see her on the panel. It's such an inspiration how much she's doing while she has studied the Geshe-ma degree. I would like to read her bio to everybody. Ani Choyang was born in Tibet and escaped to India at 18. Ordained in 2003 under His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, she holds a Rabjamba degree and is pursuing her Geshe-ma, equivalent to PhD. Tenzin Gyatso, science scholar, she trained at Emory and Northwestern universities and now coordinates the Buddhist philosophy and science project at Jangchub Choeling Nunnery Munkot, promoting dialogue between Buddhism and modern science. The topic that she is going to speak on is Guru Atisa's deeds or legacies. So please welcome her and let's listen her.
So, good afternoon, all. Okay. Yeah. So, good afternoon, all, and I'm feel so to be, honored to be here with a great opportunity to see many respected teachers and scholars and Indian, especially Indian people. This, I think, my first time to engage with such a conference with lots of Indian audience. So feel so happy to be here. And also I really wanted to say to IAC to creating such this space and giving us the opportunity to learn more and then do work together more. So as the Pooja mentioned, I'm from Jangchub, Nunnery. So Jangchub, Nunnery is based in South India. It's established by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama in late 1980s. And this nunnery was established, His Holiness one time visited to the nunnery and mentioned, he said, I built this nunnery for nuns to have equal access to study for the Buddhist philosophy, like monk. So all of us shared like many histories of Tibet. When we ask the question, how Atisa is matter to Tibet, it's eventually linked with the history of how Dhamma flourished to Tibet and how it remained, how it degenerated, and how Atisa reformed the Dharma and revived. So when we go to the history, Dhamma flourished in Tibet from the late 6th century, and then flourished very well. And then, around like 41, the king was assassinated, and then after then, the Dhamma degenerated in Tibet. And because of that matter, the King Jangchub sees how important to need, someone who have the capacity, who have the skill, who have the knowledge to reform the Dharma, to restore the Dharma as it, before the degeneration. So, So those are the reason why, Jangchub and Lama Yeshiva, desperately and putting a lot of energy. And then even some of the history says Lama Yeshiva sacrificed his life to inviting, the great master Atisa to Tibet. And then I wanted to share a little bit of history of Tibetan, institution in Tibet. So when I came to India in 2002, and then really wanted to study about Buddhist philosophy. And then when I came to India, and at the first time, I got teaching from His Holiness in 2003. It was the first teaching to me, Buddhist teaching. Even I am born in a Buddhist family, but never got a teaching from a master or from a teacher. And it was the Shantideva way of life, the first teaching. And then during the teaching, so there were only few nuns and lots of monks. So automatically the question came to me is why, less number of nuns and then more monks, monks. And then later, and also His Holiness mentioned then how, work to give us is meditate on emptiness and compassion for 5 minutes every morning. But I was wondering how to meditate on emptiness and compassion. So at that time, I asked a couple of teachers, Geshes, and how to meditate on emptiness. But it's hard to get an exam, answer how to meditate on emptiness. So many lectures, what we got is, what is emptiness? Not really that much how to put yourself into practice. So that is I'm wondering to so share, so now we all of us knows that Atisa's, matter to came to India, to came to Tibet, and then how he reformed the Dharma, as we mentioned in the previous session. And then I don't want to repeat it again, but I really wanted to ask question is, it's many times we are, very hungry or very hungry to do what it is. The question, we are trying to figure out what it is. But a kind of lack, how to do it. We are lack of question, to ourselves, how to do it, how to figure out, how to, take the Atisa's legacy continuously in the future, for the public, for the world, for yourself, and for your family, especially. Yeah. So someone taking reaction here. Yeah. So that's why, so for this, through my experience, sometimes the Atisa did the best. Putting the Dharma teaching into very simple way to practice. Everybody can do the lamp for the path to enlightenment. It's like, the food on the table. If you, engage with the book, don't need 17 years course, to practice. Don't need 20 years spent, specific with the logic and all that. Of course, I'm not saying, we don't need logic study. Of course, you need for the depth understanding and for intellectual kind of education. But if you are truly want to engage, and if you don't have that much lifetime to spend for only for Dharma, but the lamp for the path to enlighten is here. You can spend half an hour every day. And then this instruction is very clear, and don't need that much, too into like the West kind of textbook. So this question, I thinking, covered by the Guru Atisa. So that's why, so Guru Atisa's legacy, main legacy is, to, we used to say it's, balance the Tantra and Sutra teaching. Because before Guru Atisa came to Tibet, it's imbalance. Some of people are too into in Tantra, very precise in Tantra, and then we are, losing the ethical discipline of Vinaya rule. And then Guru Atisa, make it balance. It's kind of a true wing for a bird. In terms of flight to enlightenment, you need both wing of Vinaya, ethical, practice of Vinaya rules, and also like Tantra practice. And also especially, there are a few ways of saying, how he reformed of the view of emptiness. And so today here, in practical level, in Tibet, even people don't know who is Atisa and what is Atisa teaching really. But, through practical level, everyday life, they are practicing that in the morning, from Jer, Kama, Ura, share that 10 practical, contribution of Atisa in Bhutan. But it's not only in Bhutan, also in Tibet. People are practicing these days, offering, water bowl and taking serious prostration for, purifying the misdeed we have. And then sometimes use the word the sin, purify the sin. But sometimes, we think we don't have anything that's sin or like a misdeed. But if we mindfully look in ourselves, there's thousands, I think. Some of the misdeed sometimes we have done intentionally, sometimes, unintentionally, and sometimes through mistake. So those are, prostration and also offering offering mantala. And then if some of you been to Buddha Gaya, especially during this time, in the winter, in Buddha Gaya, many Tibetans, prostrating day and night there, and then offering mantala offering, and then water bowl and flower, of course. So those are practical practice. So my question here is, it actually came from very early, from 2003, 7, 6, 7. I was a, baby Buddhist learner, and studying the Dharma, and then very hungry to study the Buddha Dharma, and also know little bit history. The Dharma is from India and flourished to Tibet. But I was wondering, I didn't see that much Indian people are studying the Dharma. And then my question was, why Indian people are not studying Dharma at the time? But today, after 20 years, we have nuns here, Venerable Kavira, and then here Pooja, and also we have nuns in our Nunnery from Indian, some from Maharashtra, and some from Sikkim area, and then there are a number of nuns getting more and more. So that's I feel so delighted, because in terms of the question, how can we continuously take the Atisa's legacy? So we need people who sacrifice their life for Dharma. We need human resources. to take the Dharma in the future. So, so thank you so much, to creating this one. So I will stop here. So if we can talk more in the question answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Tenzin Choyang. Very, very beautiful presentation and taking us into the practice part of Acharya Atisha's legacy. She has reminded us of how he has not only contribution to Bhutan, the daily practices, Tibet and also Himalayan part of India now. Everybody doing the water ball offering, many of the monasteries that you visit, and also in the Mahabodhi temple, there are water balls, 7 water ball offering, which actually comes from the Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra, where Buddha did mention this 7 ball offering, and which were then mentioned by the great master like Bodhisattva Shantideva in 8th century, 11th century Acharya Atisha in their writings. And one very interesting thing would be to know for us as Indian people who are celebrating these masters, who are from India, is this 7 ball offering is nothing but the depiction of the Indian tradition of how when anybody and any guest used to come to Indian household, they used to offer first, water to cleanse their feet and hands, then the flowers, incense, something to eat, and then light and other delicacies. So if you see the description of or the explanation of this 7 ball water offering, very much comes from the Indian tradition. So thank you very much, Vemba Choyang, for mentioning all this. And now we go to the next presentation, which is to be given by Dr. Penpa Dorjee. I would like to read his bio to everybody. Dr. Penpa Dorjee retired as professor from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi. He served as the head of the Restoration Department and the librarian of the Santarakshara Library at the Institute. He received his Acharya degree from Sampurnanand Sanskrit University in Varanasi and his PhD from Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath. He has 20 books to his credit as author, co-author, translator, or editor. At present, he is working for the Dalai Lama Center for Tibetan and Indian Ancient Wisdom, Bodh Gaya, Bihar. And the topic that he's going to speak on is Master Atisha, his life and legacy, with special reference to Ratnakaradod Gada Madhyamako Upadesha. And just to mention that Sarnath is doing a great job when it comes to restoration. I'm sure Gena will take some of the insight. We should know that what is going there is, as we know that Nalanda University when it declined and the library was burnt, many of the great scriptures given by these Indian masters were burnt, and they were fortunately restored in many different languages, especially 4th century AD. The translation happened in China, and then 7th century, and the second dissemination, which Venerable Choyang mentioned during the 11th century, translation into Tibetan languages. So they were luckily preserved in those languages. Now the Sarnath University is doing a great work in restoring them back from Tibetan to Sanskrit. Lot of text of these masters have been restored from Tibetan to Sanskrit by the great effort of people like Penpa Dorjee at Sarnath University. Please welcome him for his talk here.
विदुत कल्पना जालम गंभीर उदार मूर्ते नमः समद्भद्राय समन्तस्फुरनितिशे. I'm not a scholar, and I'm just a follower of Buddha, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I just do what they say, try to. And in the beginning, I just say that Puja Bhikshu Sangha, and the Bhikshu Sangha, if there is more than 4 bhikshus, it becomes a Sangha. So I should say the Puja Bhikshu Sangha here, and all the honorable guests. And it's said that actually this is a Guru conference, and I heard that it was before that Guru Padmasambhava on the conference on Guru Padmasambhava was held. Yeah, sorry for my English because my English is not that good, but I may change between English and Hindi. So Hindi is much, I am more Indianized, not westernized. Sorry for that. Guru Padmasambhava and Atisa, these 2 scholars from India were very, very important for the Tibetans. Guru Padmasambhava came to Tibet and made the Tibetan, the rough people, the receptacle of Buddha Dharma. And after the flourish of Buddhism in Tibet, in the 11th or at the end of the 10th or 11th century, Buddhism almost vanished from the land of snow, and Atisa came there, and Atisa revived the Buddhism in its purity. So Geshe Lhagdola just said that his speech was just for a chit, in his chit, and everything is in his head. But my topic of the speech is this big. So we are we heard a lot about the Bodhipada Pradeva that was written by Atisa in Tibet. And my topic is mostly on Ratna Karandak Udghat Madhyamaka Updesh. This text is very similar to Bodhipada Pradeva, but it was written by Atisa in India, in Vikramashila, on the request of the Sridimjawa, who came to invite him to Tibet. So, when you look at the images of the Atisa, on the left side, there is a casket. And that casket is actually used to put his notes, to save his notes inside that casket. And then whenever he needs to write or say something, he just take it out from that and then explain or teach or write whatever he wants to do that. So whenever you see a image of the Atisa, you will find these 2 things just behind him. One is the casket, another one is the stupa. So, so this is what I want to say, but there's not much time, so I'm not just skipping them. But these are all things that mostly people know about this. When Tibet Emperor's Buddhism, how it's flourished, how the Tibetan text, the Sanskrit texts were translated into the Tibetan. And now here comes the Emperor Langdharma to see his power by assassinating his brother, Emperor Tiralpajan, in the late 9th century. So that is the point, that's the start of the declining of Buddhism from Tibet. During Langdharma's rule, Buddhism almost vanished from Tibet. And then most of the speakers already spoken about this. Lama Yeshe, the ruler of the Western Tibet, Kuge, he was deeply concerned about this and committed himself to cleansing the contamination. Now here, the main thing why Lama Yeshua wants to invite Atisa from India is that at those days in Tibet, especially in central Tibet, there was they are practicing like the corrupt way of Tantra, Buddhist Tantra. That's one of the main reasons why Atisa was invited to Tibet, just to purify the corrupt practice to its original form. So, before Atisa came to Tibet, Lama Yeshua actually wrote a letter to the practitioner of central Tibet, asking them to stop the corrupt practice. He wrote, Tantric practitioners living in families without having any connection with the three vehicles and claiming themselves to be Mahayanist without having any Mahayanist characteristic are like beggars claiming themselves to be a king. So he used a very harsh words for these practitioners of central Tibet. That the previous speakers already shed light on them, but how they are practicing these corrupt tantric practices in the central Tibet. So, in connection to that, the great Sakya Pandita also wrote a very emotional request to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You will find that in his third volume, in a very long letter urging the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So he cannot say personally to the personally, because they are filled with hatred. So that's why he was urging the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, now please see, can you do something to clean these corrupt practices? So I haven't could not write all those here. It's a huge, very long letter, but just one or two. The wonderful teaching of Buddha are discarded as a hay lying in the crossroad, and the words of the fake persons are being cherished more than the teachings of the Buddha. This is one thing. And he go on saying that when I refute these mistaken views, individuals filled with hatred attacked me. O Buddhas and your spiritual sons, please witness whether my words are true or false. So this is the condition of that time, how Buddhism was in Tibet. So these are the main reasons why Atisa was invited to Tibet. So according to His Holiness, the lineage of Buddhism, now this legacy, so legacy and transmission of legacy. So now I'm going direct to the rather this text actually. This is the text that I have worked in Sarnath. So it is published from there. And one of the professor who used to help us to rectify our Sanskrit is Professor Gogleji. He is here. So it's a pleasant surprise to see him with us here. He worked with us for many years in Sarnath. So Acharya Atisa, when he wrote this text, in the very beginning he said, I am writing this text according to the views of Acharya Nagarjuna. So this is his stand. He follows Acharya Nagarjuna. He said that someone who doesn't follow Nagarjuna's view or concept or tenet or doctrine, he will definitely go to hell. That is respect, or that is his belief to Acharya Nagarjuna. So, according to Acharya Nagarjuna, he was very clear in suggesting that whoever intend to he also said, whoever intend to practice the Dharma should look for a person who possesses the teachings of transmission of the great Acharya Nagarjuna and study under him. So that was his suggestion. He said, if you want to study Buddhism or the Dharma, you should look for a person who has the transmission of Acharya Nagarjuna. That he is the right person you should study under. So that goes to direct transmission from Nalanda. So this is one of the important point he made in this text. So one other thing is, he practicing bodhicitta, he time and again, he was explaining how important the practicing of bodhicitta, and so the third point he was already mentioned before, method of training the mind through 7 cause and effect instructions through extinction, self, and others. These are the 2 method things that he have explained here, which is very similar to the Bodhipada Pratibha. So, some of the when we talk about his life of narrations that he was given the prophecy by Tara. So he wrote in this text, we can find in this text that when I was reciting the jungle of Somapura, Jagannath Avalokiteshvara appeared before me and advised, O son, if you want to attain enlightenment swiftly and benefit other sentient beings, you should strive to practice and spread bodhicitta. That was the first one he was prophesied by Avalokiteshvara. And then after that, when I was circumambulating the Vajrasana in Bodh Gaya, Tara Devi and Brikuti said, if you wish to attain enlightenment swiftly, you should practice bodhicitta. So this is how he was advised by these deities, and he advised these things to the Buddhist world and Tibetan practitioners. So also he was saying that when I was residing at Vajrasana, from the windows of the Vajrasana temple, heard that, O Badanta, if you wish to practice bodhicitta, you should practice Maitri and Karuna, love and compassion. He further quoted his teacher, Suvarnadipiya, Ayushman, practice bodhicitta, which develops from love and compassion. If you don't practice that, you will not be able to accomplish as the yogis of Bengal. So Bengali yogis, he said, they practice bodhicitta and they attain or accomplish what they practice. So bodhicitta is the root of the Mahayana practice. It is the cause and seat of the Mahayana practice. This is how his teacher, Swaradipiya, said. Lama Silingpa, what we call him. And in this text, there is one other teacher he was quoting about, is Tamradipiya. So Tamradipiya, when I was working on this, and my Guruji, Professor Ramachandra Tripathi, I asked him, what is Tamradipiya? Which country is this? So he said, the Tamradipiya is Sri Lanka. So there is a teacher of him from Sri Lanka, so I really don't know much about this. And he also mentioned the story of Acharya Nagarjuna and other acharyas who gave away their life for the benefit of others. What we find these things, these narrations from some of the history books, and he described that Acharya Nagarjuna gave his head to the son of King Gautamaputra. Acharya Aryadeva gave away his eye. Acharya Maitrichit gave away his body to starving lioness. His teacher, great Brahmin Chetari, there was Jatari, someone actually told about that, broke his leg and gave away to the lioness, where he died instantly. So these narrations, these kind of how to say, these kind of narrations are given in this text. We can find it. This is a little bit different from the other texts, since this is composed in India. So now, main thing about Tantra. So we had a lot of our previous speakers have already told about this. उन्होंने ये सब बातें कहा कि तंत्र को उन्होंने तंत्र का वो क्या कहते हैं अभ्यास किया है, अभ्यास के लिए लोगों को क्या कहते उपदेश दिया है, ये सब. लेकिन इनका ये एक इम्पोर्टेंट ये है कि इन्होंने ये कहा है कि द मॉन्क्स जो है, भिक्षु जो है, उनको दो तरह के जो अभिषेक को नहीं ग्रहण करना चाहिए, न देना चाहिए. ये है कि द मॉन्क्स हु रिसीव or bestow the sacred empowerment and the wisdom empowerment would break his bhikshu's vow and thereby harm the Buddha's teaching. Both masters and students will undoubtedly go to the hell if they practice such. ये एक very important बात है, क्योंकि उस समय तिब्बत में इस तरह की बातें हुआ करते थे, जिसका कोई प्रामाणिक सूत्र नहीं हुआ करते थे, लेकिन वो कहते हैं कि ये प्रामाणिक है, इस तरह की हमको अभ्यास करना चाहिए, लोगों को इस तरह की बातें. इसी पर ये लामा जंगचुब ने कहा कि हमको एक इस तरह की, अभी इससे पहले आप लोगों ने कहा था that please teach us something like that. So he wrote Bodhipatta Pradipa. In Bodhipatta Pradipa also he said, because the great Tantra of primordial Buddha forbids empathetically those observing pure contact should not take the sacred and wisdom initiation. ये दोनों के बाद ये दो जो बात है जो माध्यमिक उपदेश में है और बोधिपत्र प्रदेश में, उस तरह की उस समय की सिचुएशन को बयान करता है. It text because of these corrupt practice, then sorry. Yeah, so this is how actually he wrote in this. So why he was writing this in India, such a content in this text? Because the Sudam Gyawa, who was sent by Jangchub to invite Atisa to Tibet, he narrated all the situations of Tibet at that time. So on the basis of this narration of the situation of Tibet, he just wrote these things on the request of the Sudam Gyawa. अब इसमें एक और बात है, इसमें कई भारतीय आचार्यों का नाम है और नाम के साथ साथ उन्होंने क्या लिखा है कि उन्होंने किस किस किताब को उन्होंने लिखा है. तो एक ये है कि इन्होंने ये स्पष्ट करने की कोशिश किया है कि इस आचार्य ने ये लिखा है, इस आचार्य ने ये लिखा है. अगर इस तरह के आचार्य कोई दूसरे किताब या दूसरे ग्रंथ यदि आप लोग इसे प्रैक्टिस करते हैं तो शायद वो गलत है. इसको दर्शाने के लिए उन्होंने इस तरह के बातें इसमें लिखा है. सो जैसे कि इसमें in our tradition actually mostly like Vasubandhu, we regarded just one Vasubandhu. But in this text, he gave two Vasubandhus. एक Vasubandhu वो है जो वैभाषिक है और एक Vasubandhu वो है जो योगाचार्य है. जिस Vasubandhu ने अभिधर्म कोश को लिखा है, he is वैभाषिका, और जिस Vasubandhu ने जो विंशति और त्रिशिका जो इस तरह के योगाचार्य के ग्रंथ लिखा है वो योगाचार्य है. तो इन्होंने दो Vasubandhu को इस ग्रंथ, इससे पहले there was a kind of narrations, a research saying that there are two Vajubandhus, but we don't accept those. But once we saw this text, now I don't know. That concept may change or not, that's up to us. That इस तरह की तो ये इस रत्नकरंड उद्घाट महायान उपदेश जो ये किताब है इसमें he given the detail of आचार्य नागार्जुना's उनके जो लाइफ के अंत की जो बात है जो श्री पर्वत में वो सब इसमें लिखा है उन्होंने जिस तरह से गौतम पुत्र के सन उसको किस तरह से उन्होंने अपने सर का दान दिया है कैसे किया है किस तरह से किया है everything is narrated in this text. So from this I think they have based on this and the historians have also written this story or the narration about Acharya Nagarjuna. So he also gave a glimpse of Acharya Nagabodhi, one of the great Mahayanists, the student of Nagarjuna. He, Nagarjuna in the form of Yogi Shabaripa. So when you go to Bodh Gaya, there is a cave where Nagabodhi was practicing as an ascetic, the Tantra, actually Vajrayana, Tantric practice there. At present they call it Dongeshwari in Gaya. Yeah. So he also narrated that Acharya Nagabodhi, he was facing to the south and still receiving teaching from Acharya Nagarjuna. So this is also he have documented in this text, in this book. And so if you go through this text, you will find many texts written by Acharya Nagarjuna, but he has categorically categorized all those texts written by Acharya Nagarjuna to who are the benefactors of that particular text. Who? So when okay. तो इसमें ये लिखा है कि ये किताब आचार्य ने इन जनों के लिए लिखा है ये किताब आचार्य ने इन जनों के लिए लिखा है इन्होंने ये कहा है कि ये जो आचार्य ने लिखा है वो benefits all walks of life ऐसा नहीं कि एक पर्टिकुलर के लिए लिखा है जैसे कि जनरली नहीं लिखा है इन्होंने जो लिखा है इन्होंने ये सब जैसे कि मॉन्क है लेकिन वो पढ़ाई में काम क्या कहते हैं कि मंद बुद्धि है तो उनके लिए एक अलग किताब लिखा है जो ब्राइट है उनके लिए अलग किताब लिखा है इस तरह से इसमें एक डिटेल इन्होंने he have given a detailed account what to say detail of those particular texts written by Acharya Nagarjuna. So he said he follow only Acharya Nagarjuna's doctrine, and he also said, as I said before, if you don't follow Acharya Nagarjuna, then you will go to hell. So time is up. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Penpa Dorjee. Such a wonderful and comprehensive presentation of very important text by Acharya Atisa Dipankara Srijana, also known as Ratnakara Karanda Udghat Madhyamika Upadesha. And this, as you know, there are, in fact, it is so wonderful to know. And for scholars who are working on R.A. Nagarjuna, it is a great treasure because when it comes to R.A. Nagarjuna's biography, again, there are so many contested views. when I say that my specialization in R.N. Nagarjuna's philosophy, first thing they ask is, did R.N. Nagarjuna come to Nalanda University? So I say I leave it on the historians, I go to the philosophy of it. So idea is that this is a very, very important text from 11th century. So not the current scholars. So this mission, that manuscript collection, this will help us to actually reform these false narratives when it comes to history of India also, whereas India has always been seen just as a subject of study and never as something which can contribute to the policies and the historical narrative. So very, very important text to know about R.N. Nagarjuna's legacy, what kind of text he has written, and who were the audience of those texts. And also very, very strong disclaimer that when it comes to philosophy of Acharya Dipankara Srijana, although he learnt a lot from Acharya Dharmakirti of Indonesia, who himself was a Chittamatra philosopher. When it comes to his view is Chittamatra. But what Acharya Atisa followed as a philosophy is the Madhyamika philosophy, because he's a great admirer and the practitioner of R.N. Nagarjuna's philosophy. So these are very important nuances which Dr. Penpa Dorjee has brought for us. And text is available, already back translated, and available in both Tibetan also. And I'm not too sure about the English translation of it. Hindi translation is available. And of course, the work can be taken up to translate in English as well as other Indian regional languages. So thank you once again for this wonderful presentation. Now the floor is open for question answer. Yes. Please, Varunji, briefly identify yourself and ask your question to whoever you want.
Namaskar. My name is Varun Jain, and this question I think can be addressed by any of the wonderful experts here. But perhaps Shri Dorjee, you can take a stab at it, given your expertise in research and restoration. So I was curious to take a more historical view of these philosophies, and could you comment a little bit on the kind of changes that one would have seen from Guru Rinpoche to Guru Atisa, in terms of the kind of innovations and evolutions in the philosophy that might have happened to bring back the rigor of Buddhism to Tibet, and also if there's been any seminal research on this aspect, maybe 200, 300 years of the evolution of Buddhism in Tibet, both from a historical and a philosophical point of view. I know it could be a much longer answer, so I am happy to interact with you over lunch, but welcome any insights you might, any of you might have on that. Thank you so much.
It's on.
Hello. Yeah. So, for your question, I don't have much to, say on this. I don't know whether I can satisfy your question. But since Guru Rinpoche, now, it is a historical question that when Acharya Chandrarakshita was invited to Tibet, and he started teaching the Kawaju, 10 rituals: not to kill, not to lie, not to involve in something like that, in the 10 things, right? And all those karmaphala things. And the Tibetans at that time, they are not ready for that. They are not ready for that, because now I can say that this is actually documented in many early texts of Tibetan histories, like Pashe and Chujung, Medo Yangu Dangziju. They are very early texts now. We got lately access to us, right? And then Ajaya thought that these people are not going to actually ready for the recipient of Buddhist teaching. So they should do something, because at that time, Bon religion was flourishing in Tibet. It was the indigenous Tibetan religion. So in that indigenous Tibetan religion, they have some kind of practice that when a person dies, and they just go to the grave of the person, and they लेकिन आह्वान करते हैं उनके जो स्पिरिट को, और उनको ये बातें किया जाता था, इस तरह की बातें लिखा गया है उसमें। तो इससे ये साबित होता है कि जो तिब्बती जो है, इनकी इसमें इस तरह के मिरेकल्स है, इसमें गुरु क्या कहते हैं कि शांत रक्षित जो हमको बता रहे हैं, उसमें तो कुछ नहीं है, हमको ये नहीं करना है, वो नहीं करना है, और कुछ करना ही नहीं है बस। तो इसलिए इन्होंने सोचा कि हमको भी कुछ जुगाड़ करना चाहिए। So then he invited Acharya Padmasambhava to Tibet. He is a great tantric practitioner. He did a lot of miracles in Tibet. And from that point of view, Tibetans thought that, they have a point. And in this way, Tibetans become the recipient of the Buddhist. They should पात्र बन गया, बौद्ध धर्म की पात्रता तब बना। इसीलिए हम आचार्य पद्मसंभव को बहुत ही मानते हैं। ये है एक बात। अब उसी से जब उसके बाद ये जो बात बना, तो उसके बाद जो तिब्बत में जो भिक्षु बना, फिर संस्कृत सीखा, तिब्बत से जो भारत से लाए हुए जो संस्कृत जो ग्रंथ है, तथाकथित के जो कंजूर और तेंजूर, ये सब धीरे धीरे करके अनुवाद किया गया, और तिब्बत में इस तरह से बहुत 9th सेंचुरी तक बहुत अच्छी तरह से फ्लोरिश हो गया। लेकिन जो अभी मैंने कहा था ना कि लंग धर्म के बाद फिर ये गड़बड़ हो गया। लंग धर्म में अपने के पावर के लिए अपने भाई को मारा, और उसके साथ उन्होंने क्या किया कि तिब्बत को पूरी तरह से एक टूट गया, पूरा तितर बितर हो गया था ना। तब उसको फिर जब किसी के शासन नहीं होता है, जो बनाना रिपब्लिक जैसा बोलते हैं ना, हो जाता है, तो जो अपने मन में आता है वो करते रहते हैं। तो उस समय ये भी चांसेस रहते हैं कि भारत से या नेपाल से बहुत सारे ऐसे आचार्य आ गया था उधर कि मैं जो कहता हूँ वो सच है, इसकी ये करो, वो करो। इसी तरह से फिर तिब्बत में जो बौद्ध धर्म है वो लुट के कागर तक पहुँच गया था। यही कारण था। तब आचार्य अतिशा को तिब्बत में इनवाइट करने के बाद तिब्बत के जो क्या कहते हैं कि ये बौद्ध धर्म की जो, जैसे पहले हमारे जो पूर्व वक्ताओं ने कहा था कि एक इन्फेंट को सिखाने की तरह उन्होंने बेसिक लेवल से सिखा करके इसको एकदम तथाकथित की क्या कहते हैं कि वचन के अनुसार उसको एक प्यूरिटी में ला लिया। तब जब उसके जो उनकी जो लिगेसी है, अभी हमने बता लिया था, उनकी लिगेसी है, तो डोमतम्बा वगैरह से जा करके फिर चोंखाबाजी पे आ गया। और चोंखाबाजी के बाद, और तो सिर्फ चोंखाबाजी नहीं, दूसरे जो हमारे जो ये है कई सजनिमा, सब में बोधिपथ प्रतीक का बहुत बड़ा इन्फ्लुएंस है। तब जाकर अभी जो शेप हम तिब्बत के जो बौद्ध धर्म को देखते हैं, वो अभी तक सही सलामत आपके सामने है। ये है। थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you very much. So what Yelena basically mentioned for everybody's benefit is that there is a lot of historical contribution when it comes to spread of Buddhism in Tibet in 7th, 8th century, where Acharya Shantarakshita and Guru Rinpoche took the lead to spread Buddhism in Tibet, and later after, again, the Buddhism declined in Tibet, and 11th century is known as the golden period of dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet because of Acharya Atisha's contribution in terms of both history, philosophy, and translation. So great Naksul Lotsawa and other translators, they translated the text at his during his presence, and also many new texts came into being which contributed to what Tibet is practicing today as Buddhism. So there is a evolution in terms of history as well as philosophy and practice when it comes from 7th to 11th century in Tibet. And then, of course, the 14th century, the great Je Tsongkhapa inherited all those in his tradition, which is known as Gelugpa today. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful expositions. Since the question of history was raised, I remember this conference in Bailakuppe about 15 years ago on Shantarakshita that we'd organized. And, it was a conversation between different schools. And one of the things that came up was that the modern historians and scholars have a different relationship to history than the traditional Tibetans. And I believe Shantarakshita's, age is one of the very interesting conversations that happened. People said, oh, he lived for 700 years. The Tibetans believe. And so I was wondering if there is something similar with Atisha. Are there variations in the tradition as to his lifespan and his, historical presence? And secondly, something that Venerable Pooja Dabral mentioned, Dharmakirti, the philosopher. Are there two different Dharmakirtis that we're talking about? Could you just clarify that? Because, you have, the Pramanavartika wala Dharmakirti, and then you have the other one.
You're very right, ma'am. There are two Dharmakirtis. The great Buddhist logician, who is also revered, his teacher, Acharya Dignath, 6th century AD, 5th, 6th century, and then 7th century AD, Acharya Dharmakirti, who kind of not only reformed, but very systematized teaching of logic. When it was, Nyaya tradition was already available, already present in India. The Shastrat and the Nyaya teachings were already very, very vibrant. So Acharya Dharmakirti and Acharya Dignath's contribution to Buddhist logic is exceptionally popular, and also in discussion with Indian tradition of Nyaya. And that Acharya Dharmakirti is 7th century, whereas the Acharya Dharmakirti, who served as a teacher to Acharya Atisha in 11th century, that is Acharya Dharmakirti of Indonesia, who lovingly also known as Lama Sarlingpa. And the other question, other panelists will be very happy to respond to about the age.
No, we don't have such thing like related to the Atisha. It was very clearly said in the biography of Atisha that Atisha could have lived 90 plus years if he lived in India. Since he went to Tibet, and eventually I think the health conditions and the kind of food habit and then the kind of those conditions were much worse in Tibet in those days compared to India. So if you are living in a kind of a highly advanced place where the health conditions and then health services and then medication and all those are better, you can live better, you can live a longer life. So there is no controversy on that. Atisha lived up to 70 plus years, and 20 years of his life was shortened by his traveling to Tibet. That we see that as a great kind of sacrifice that he has given to the Dharma.
One question here, then we come back to Mamia.
Tashi Dilek, Namaste to all. My name is Nima Ongdi Bhutia. I am from Sikkim. With my little knowledge, I don't know whether my questions make sense or not, but out of curiosity, I am asking these questions. And that who was responsible for spread incorrect doctrines before Guru Atisa invited to Tibet? Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have a single name for that. I think there were a lot of people. So there is no single name and there is no single tradition to be blamed on.
Last, thank you, sir.
One thing, maybe may I add to this? In the Nehru issue, he clearly said that in his title of the letter, he said that to the practitioner of Central Tibet, not whole of Tibet. So that's the place where these corrupt practice were actually
Dorjee, thank you.
Yeah, it's related to the last question. My name is Amita. Was there a system by which you could call out Atisa or subsequent gurus, established a system whereby you could distinguish the false, teachings or the impersonators, or because in India we have a lot of fake godmen and people like that, or was it a kind of self-cleansing system through which people just stop going to such people? So is there, and what is it that distinguishes a true guru then? Is it the fact that he spends a number of years? How does one distinguish? And is there a system in place?
I would like to say that I think if we go to the first chapter of the Lamrim, we will be very clear on that question. It addresses that question very clearly, and the entire kind of responsibility is left on the disciple and the practitioner himself, rather than on blaming the society or blaming the guru or blaming someone else. So it's very clear. So how to kind of identify a qualified and good guru, how to differentiate a qualified and good guru from the fake and kind of hypocritic and those kind of things. So I think that's my answer for that.
I just may add to, this is the exact answer. Lamrim is written by J. Tsongkhapa, 14th century, and it's actually extension of Bodhipat Pradeep. So Bodhipat Pradeep, 67 verses, he explained them in a huge volume of text known as Lamrim. Lam is the path, Rim is the stages. So stages of the path, basically. And it is available in English. It is translated in English. There are 3 volumes to it. And in the first chapter, as Geshe-la has already mentioned, there is the whole path starts from identifying how to rely on a correct guru, So there is a mention of the qualification of the guru, and there it does not stop. Then comes the qualification of a correct student also. So relying, gurus are, of course, we have a great pedestal for them and idealism, but when it comes to students, we don't really interrogate what kind of student is also required to attain the path of enlightenment. So both are discussed by Lama Atisa in Bodhipat Pradeep in short, and then further extended and explained by J. Tsongkhapa in detail, who should be your teacher and who should be the student. If I'm not wrong, I think it's Lama Atisa or somebody else, that a student said that I studied with master for 12 years. And then he said, now may I accept you as my teacher? So the master says, okay, you took 12 years to accept me as my teacher, but now it's my chance to see if you are a right student or not. So that was the tradition in India. Not to hurry when it comes to, I take somebody as your guru. Nowadays it's becoming very fashionable to have a guru and start the practice, and they end up in so much of problem, psychological issues. So this was the Indian tradition, rich Indian tradition, where you take time to identify somebody as a guru, learn from all, and then also as a student we have a big responsibility. Maybe the last question for...
good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
My name is Dorjee. Actually, I was curious what was the relationship between Lotsawa Rinchen Sangpo and Atisa, because
to my little knowledge, they both met, and Rinchen Sangpo played a kind of quite significant role to recommend the king to invite Atisa, because Tibetans were looking forward to invite the best who can benefit the Tibetans. So Rinchen Sangpo has been to India many times, and he was well aware about the Indian Buddhist community, and then the scholarly value of the other scholars, and the Atisa included. So he was one who recommended very strongly to invite Atisa, and then Atisa and Rinchen Sangpo met together. And since Atisa was impressed by the Rinchen Sangpo's scholarly value, he insisted that Rinchen Sangpo should serve him as his translator but Rinchen Sangpo refused respectfully, and then Rinchen Sangpo received teachings from Atisa many times, and particularly like the highest Yoga Tantra teachings and the initiations, and he practiced according to the advice given to him by Atisa, and he found that there were kind of a lot of new things that he had learned from Atisa by meeting Atisa, unless he could have ignorant about those things.
Thank you very much. So with this, we conclude our session. Very wonderful panel. I thank all the speakers for this panel that we just had, very rich. And we are going to listen to other luminaries. We have Professor Gokhale here. Professor Madhumita ji has also joined. So stay tuned. And